Period is a global youth-powered organization fighting to end period poverty and stigma through service, education, and advocacy. So we distribute products to people in need. We're trying to change the way people think, talk, and learn about periods, and we're fighting for menstrual equity through period policy. I started the organization when I was 16 years old, inspired by my family's own experience with housing instability and hearing the stories about experiencing period poverty from homeless women who are in much worse living situations than I was at the time. Started this organization, hustled. With the help of companies and sponsors like L'Oreal, we were able to really scale. And to date, we've addressed over 1 million periods through product distribution, which is around 13 million units of product, and registered over 700 campus chapters in all 50 states and 40 countries. And we're continuing to take down the tampon tax, celebrating wins, taking it down in Ohio, Utah, Washington, California, and just launching a few campaigns to take it down in the next few states now.
I love that. I love how your work is focused on both like the product distribution and like addressing the needs in the community, but as well changing policy while you're at it. I think like that two-pronged approach is super cool. Did you start with policy, or you started just with product?
So we started just with product. Like I started with just this idea of, okay, I know 20 homeless women like personally, and I want to get them period products. At the time I was 16, I didn't even know what a nonprofit was. I don't even think I really understood policy. But I think that what started keeping me up at night is realizing I can distribute all the product that I want to, but if I disappeared, God forbid, like we would not be making any long-term change. And really realizing that it is through policy and changing the system itself that we make that long-term systemic change. And so that's how I started really gearing my attention and love for policy in this work. And I mean, I also ran for office when I was 19 and accidentally became the youngest Asian American political candidate. And I think that really taught me like the power of students organizing and realizing like, oh, I don't have to be, of a certain age or pedigree to start making policy change.
That's amazing and inspiring. So I think what's so cool, what you two have in common. Okay, so 14 and 16 is when you started your organizations. And I kind of heard from Val that like she just trusted her gut and like her support system. What was your like aha moment at 16 years old that said like, I can do this?
I don't even know if it was a I can do this. I think my aha moment was more like a I have to do this. Like I think for me it was really learning about the tampon tax. So in 2014 when I started all of this, 40 states in the US had a sales tax on period products, considering them luxury items. Meanwhile, products like Rogaine, Viagra, penile pumps were considered essential goods. And I think it was learning that and getting so angry about it, and like angry that even existed, and angry that it was a global issue, like that so many countries around the world have this tampon tax. And I think I really understood that as a 16-year-old like budding feminist, that this was like a way of saying that menstrual hygiene wasn't a necessity, and I very much believe that it is.
Yeah, that's infuriating. If any woman thought it was a luxury, I'm sure you could talk to any woman and she'd tell you differently.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it for me, it was like, if this tampon tax exists, like I need to do this because this is a much bigger issue. And so for me, it was like, okay, I'm just going to prove to people that it is a necessity by focusing on service work. And I think, as soon as we started growing this movement, like within 6 months, we were a national organization, and then 12, we were global. And I think I started getting to a place of like, we need to take more action, both from a cultural change perspective and then eventually a political change perspective.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, as soon as quarantine became a thing, our inboxes started to flood because people still need period products. And I think that it's kind of a surprising realization for a lot of our partners that periods aren't going to stop for a pandemic. So we made the commitment to sending period products for free at no cost to any service provider that requests them. So literally any shelter, any food pantry. I know a lot of other women of worth actually run service providers. So if they need period products, we will send them period products for free at no cost to them. So we kind of rallied all of our sponsors and stocked our warehouses. We have about 2 million units of product that we're getting out the door very quickly. We have a nimble team on the ground that's social distancing, but distributing these pads and tampons and menstrual cups as fast as we can. And it's just been an incredible feat of sending hundreds of thousands of period products out a week. And also, I think, a lot of our programming is with chapters, right? With youth activists at schools and on the ground who can no longer meet in person. And so we transition our training to be online. So we have a policy advocacy boot camp that usually has 30 to 40 people in it. Now we have 170 in our policy advocacy boot camp, each person having a specific policy goal. And over the 7 weeks, they launch a full blown campaign and start lobbying digitally. And we're really excited to kind of see that come to fruition. And all the petitions, a lot of them trying to take down the tampon tax, are going to be launching next week.
What I love about both of your organizations is actually not only are you leading and you're doing this good work, but you have opportunities for other people to get involved too. And I think that's kind of part of why we're here today, right? Like to understand, okay, how did you do it at such a young age? But if anyone, young or older, any age really, is thinking about getting involved, whether it's with your organization or a cause that they're passionate about or something they see that's wrong in the world, like you both saw wrong in the world, there are ways that you can help. There are things that exist. Tell us how you find, like, when you start either a new chapter or when you recruit someone to work on your team, and what is it like for them when they're just like ramping up? They don't really know how to do this like social justice work, but they're in it. Like, what is that like?
I think for us, we try to really make the barrier for entry of getting involved super low, right? And that was a really big passion of mine coming in. Is I think I have this mentality of, I really believe that leadership is when you are empowering others to be leaders themselves. And so I think for us in everything that we do, both from a staff perspective or a chapter perspective, is how can we meet people where they're at, regardless of, how much money they have or resources or how much time they have or what connections and network that they have, but saying, we're going to give you everything that you need in a toolkit. We'll give you everything you need from our headquarters staff support to support you in your journey of taking action. And I think that lowering that barrier for entry with resources and toolkits and network and examples of people who, like them, have done it as well for inspiration is a really big part of our mentality of how we grow this out. I would say absolutely the importance of having an incredible team. I think that looking back on who I was early high school years, I was sort of like the kid in the group project of the class who would rather just like do it myself so we would get done faster. And I think that when you are trying to build a movement or build an organization and have, really strong, compassionate company values, I think that I had to learn very quickly to delegate and trust others. And I think that that's something that I very much have tried to carry with me in everything that we do in building Period's team. Is I recognize that you cannot do this work alone. And when you grow really fast, you have to be ready for that from a team perspective. And so, I actually regularly in my journal will write down what I think my strengths are and then identify what I don't think I'm the best at, right? And I think it's super important to acknowledge what you're not super good at so you can find team members who can complement your skills and work with it, right? So I know that I'm very like vision focused, and I'm not super great at the operations, like small, minute details of how to make that happen. And so for me, I think I've always really found it important in everything I do, from this organization to running a company to, running for office, is I can do kind of the vision, and I love organizing. In terms of like finance and operations, like I need a partner who can kind of be like the COO to what I'm trying to build too. And I think that having that partner and finding people you can trust to build something with has been integral to everything that I've done.
And you're doing it at such a high level now, and it can be as simple as finding a friend who shares the same dream as you and taking it on together as a team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. When I started when I was 16, my partner was another 16-year-old guy friend of mine, and Vincent, and we started this organization, and he was like our operations director. And fast forward 5 years, we have grown into this organization. We did hired a firm to like do a national search and find a new executive director to kind of build this organization from behind the scenes. And so I think no matter who it is and what level you're at, like finding a partner who can just be your thought partner, kind of be your support, but also again like complement your skills, I think is really important. Yeah, I think for me, self-care is something I'm always learning, right? And I think for me, my biggest change in quarantine has been sleep. Before this social distancing time, I was on speaking tour for about like 2, 3 years. So this is actually the longest I've been on the ground, I think, in like 4 or 5 years. And so it's been a lot of adjusting. And I think similar to what Val said, like I put a lot of pressure on myself to like serve millions of periods and to write a book. Like my book proposal was due weeks ago for my second book, and I've not started. Like I think that I have I really tried to take the pressure off myself and try to sleep more. I'm addicted to this sleep app called Sleep Cycle, and I've been like tracking my sleep and trying to sleep like 6-7 hours a week. So that's been great. And then I think also at the same time, I think new workout habits too. I think for me, self care really does come in the form of like fitness and working out. I think a lot of that is, as a sexual assault survivor, like being able to feel connected to my body, and also just having time where I'm not working, but I'm like just listening to an audiobook or music and running. But I think that it's been really important for me to like work out once a day, even if that's just for like 20 minutes, or if that's just like sit ups on the roof. I think that's been really important for me.
That's great. I need all of those tips. All right, let's take one more question, guys. Okay, so this is from Jennifer Silber. What is something you've accomplished that you never thought would be possible when you first started? Everything.
Oof.
I think for me, it would be when I started my nonprofit period, I had one goal, which was to serve 20 homeless women a week in Portland. And so it's not even that when I started, I didn't think what we would become now would be possible. I think I maybe thought it was so impossible that I wasn't even thinking about it. Like when I started, I was never like, I'm gonna be a period warrior and like I'm gonna write a book and I'm going to build a movement. Like in no way was that my goal. I was like very much minding my own business, serving periods in Portland. And then we were getting inundated with messages from around the country who were like, tell us how to do this in our community. So we kind of accidentally fell into this chapter network. And similarly, it kind of like along the road, I started getting approached to write a book, right? So I think it's all of the things that I've done. It kind of came out of this pure passion of focusing on the work that I loved and what I felt like I was called to do. And kind of these other opportunities started coming. And then, of course, once I think I realized, okay, we're going to build the social movement, it was like, we are the menstrual movement. And then it became very strategic. But I think, when I started, like when I started, I wanted to be a obstetric surgeon because I loved Addison and Grey's Anatomy. Like that was like I was that or an OBGYN or public defender. I actually did one beauty pageant when I was a freshman in high school and I was like, I'm gonna be a public defender. And I remember saying that because I look back on that and I think where I am now is nowhere where I thought I would be. Like I didn't even think that doing this would be a career. I never thought we would have staff members. I never thought I'd be, managing people who are, much older than me, but I think so inspiring and experienced. And so it's just been an absolute honor and dream to do this work. I think for me, like Women of Worth in 2017 was like honestly, like my first kind of progress and milestone of being like, I am worthy of this success, or I am worth having this platform because and I think I haven't fully realized that, but like when you start something because you're passionate about it, and for me, my passion comes from like a pretty deep place of pain. Like I think I found my passion in a time when, I was housing unstable with my family, and when I was realizing that I grew up with domestic violence and sexual abuse in my family, and I was actually in a very abusive relationship at the time. Those experiences made me feel very powerless and really struggle with this concept of self-worth, right? And I think as a 16-year-old, I really conditioned myself to think that my worth came from my body. And I think through this work is what made me realize that like my worth and my potential came from my voice and the potential I had to mobilize others. And that was very integral into my being. However, when we started feeling getting success, all I felt was guilt. And I just felt this like overwhelming imposter syndrome of like, I shouldn't have this platform. I shouldn't have this network. I shouldn't have this success. And no matter how many awards we won or how many stages I could speak on, I would get off the stage and just have panic attacks of like, I don't deserve this, right? And I think L'Oreal and this Women of Worth program, when you have, I think some of your greatest like celebrity role models, like looking at you saying you are worth it, and also opening up to me backstage, like that they also struggle with imposter syndrome, right? Or I think that, seeing all of these incredible women coming together, and I think and I think for the first time feeling like you can relate to them, right? Like when you see all the other nominees, I think the biggest thing for me is we could all relate to each other. Like we all like would connect almost immediately. And I think I would think like, I think you're so inspiring. And so like maybe I'm a little inspiring. And I think getting up on stage and kind of having the platform to say like, I am worth it. And for me, I think it was a really big aha moment of saying like imposter syndrome is okay because it is kind of a symptom of what I've gone through. But also at the same time, like I actually think I have the responsibility to push through that imposter syndrome and realize my self-worth, because if I am a role model to all these younger girls, all these chapter members, and I want them to feel worth it, then that has to start with myself as well.